So in my experience, I've noticed there are two main ways people ingest spiritual information: the scattershot and the laser beam. Both ways of reading have utility, but both also have significant drawbacks that if we are serious about reduction of suffering in our lives, we might want to become aware of. So make sure you watch this video till the end to understand what those drawbacks are, but otherwise let's get into it. So let's start by exploring the scattershot mentality. Now, this mentality is usually effective and most employed when someone first gets involved with spiritual practice in the first place. Maybe they've figured out the scientific benefits of meditation, and that sort of opens up a portal for them to start exploring spirituality. So what they might do is they'll go out into the field and they'll go to a library and pick out all sorts of spiritual books, right? They scattershot their attention everywhere, and they diversify. Maybe you're reading about Zen, maybe reading about Vipassana, maybe reading about the Way, and eventually they might stumble across something through this scattershotting that actually resonates with them. And this is the power in it, right? We're really expanding our breadth and our knowledge of understanding across all different sorts of philosophies. Sometimes you might just stumble across a book that really grabs out to you and really plants seeds of incredible wisdom in you. For example, I just watched an interview with Angelo DeLullo, who emphasized the fact that
the circumstances of my life are right. And I picked up a book that I had. I think I actually had it from a class that I took in college. I never opened the book. It's called The Three Pillars of Zen.
Until he read the book, The Way of Zen, which was sort of just a scattershot, spontaneous book that he picked up and read, it really landed and allowed him to realize awakening, because it sort of made it apparent to him that awakening was real. It was possible.
And I was like, oh my God, that's possible. That's possible. That's possible. That every single one was proof that it's possible.
Normal guy, normal girl waking up.
So that's the power in this sort of like expanding out and scattershotting your attention to all sorts of different books. But the downside to this mentality is that when we sort of continuously keep searching for spiritual content that is ultimately going to nullify and break away and etch away at the sense of self, what we don't realize is it's the ego secretly, slipperily working its way back in, saying that, oh, look, you're not happy in this way, you need to read more books, as opposed to just sort of realizing that we need to just apply the wisdom that we've already read. I sort of call this like mental masturbation, where we intellectualize a lot of spiritual teachings without actually applying them. It's a trap, right? We just keep on reading, we keep on thinking that we need to accrue more and more spiritual knowledge, instead of just pausing, stopping, and doing. And the other downside of this as well is we live in this age of so much information. There's just so much spiritual information or self-improvement advice out there that when you sort of scattershot your attention, you have this huge plethora of knowledge and understanding from all sorts of philosophies and traditions. It's like, which one do I fucking pick in my practice? So maybe you can see that if we continue to do this for too long, it's ultimately not going to lead to effective results in our spiritual practice in the reduction of suffering, which is where the laser beam technique comes in. So once you've had a taste of all of the sort of the spiritual buffet of reading all these sorts of books and teachings, self-improvement stuff, which certainly has a place, right? But then the laser beam technique comes in where we really pick something that resonates with us and we just go hard into it, where we just pick like the number one book in that field. So for instance, like if we were doing a non-duality spiritual practice, maybe we'll pick something by Adi Shanti, The End of Your World, right? The number one book that people constantly go back to, and then we just really tunnel vision on that book for some time. So compare that approach of practice, that mentality of practice, to going to a bookstore and then randomly picking out some meditation manual and applying the insights directly to your practice, and then cross-pollinating all sorts of techniques, as opposed to just laser beaming on the book that is actually recommended by a meditation teacher or a lineage that you're practicing under. And when we have the book or the practice or the teaching that is actually going to move our practice forward because we feel a gravitation toward it, I really believe that only like 5% of our time should be spent reading, and 95% of the time should be spent actually applying the technique. Maybe reading like 10 pages, right? And then actively recalling what you just read. So, oh, okay, is there something I can actually apply there from reading that passage? Wow, this seems really cool, this little insight. Okay, I'm gonna now take that into my practice, sit with it and apply it, right? Because intellectualizing spiritual teachings can never and will never beat actually applying them. Reading has its place, but you can't eat the menu. Just a quick intervention, guys. If you like the video, make sure to like the video because it helps me out in the algorithm so more people can see this video and get benefit. Cheers. But again, there are drawbacks to this mentality as well, I think. If we become so tunnel vision on just one certain book or one certain practice, it might actually be detrimental to our growth. So I'll give an example of my sort of journey with spiritual practice. So I started, as many of you know, with Vipassana meditation, and I did that for 2 years, where I just went really hard into the practice with just completely tunnel vision on Goenka body scanning, right? And all of the theory and books surrounding Goenka's technique. So I followed through with this sort of laser beam technique almost from the get-go. But what I've come to realize is that by only doing that one practice, I was ultimately beating my head against the wall. I didn't have an affinity for that practice as much as I would have liked. But it really took the guidance of a teacher as well as trusting my own intuition to make that shift away from laser beaming back out to sort of scattershotting and get a more meta perspective on different avenues that I could take as opposed to smashing my head against the wall with one technique. So having that teacher of someone highly realized ideally to give you that meta perspective to make sure that you're not acting out just on a small little hindrance or doubt or something in your practice before continuing along with the practice is significantly more effective. And of course, it's not like you're locked into one modality or the other forever. So you could be laser beaming into one book, for instance, on how to do Vipassana well or something like that, or some other spiritual practice, while also maybe you'll just decide to scattershot a little bit into perhaps reading an autobiography of an inspiring figure to help give your practice more energy and ardency or something like that. But at the end of the day, it's important to have that mindful awareness enough to be able to realize that, say you're reading the autobiography and then you see that this guru had this amazing practice that's different to yours and he looks so happy, and then you're like, oh, I want to do this practice now. But it's having enough mindfulness to realize that, okay, maybe I need to take a break. This is just a temporary wave of excitement for a different practice. I'm not going to immediately change and spin my practice and go down a huge rabbit hole of reading books about a whole different lineage. I'm first going to consult my teacher, tell her what I've seen, but still continue to laser beam on my main practice. I'd be curious to know if you would categorize yourself in the scattershot or the laser beam way of sort of reading. Let me know in the comments, I'd be curious to know. Okay guys, if you found this video valuable, make sure to give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more videos like this one. And if you like this video, you'll like the video that I did on what I wish my meditation teacher told me after meditating for 2 years under one lineage of Vipassana meditation. So make sure to check that one out. But otherwise, you're heard and you're seen, you're important, and I'll see you in the next video, guys. Thank you so much for watching this one. Adios.